So my great-grandfather came from Italy in 1890s and wasn't a rancher, just came out west and was looking for a better life. And he worked for a merchant, a shipping company basically. It went from Elko to Mountain City, which is north of Elko here, and brought supplies up there and back and forth, and that's what his job was. And there is a little place called the dinner station there that my other great-grandfather owned, and he had met his wife there. Her name was Judita Pellini. And the Pellinis own a lot of ground. They own the whole left-hand side of the highway to Idaho at one time, and part of the right side, and somehow they had all kinds of money. And we haven't figured out what exactly they did, what they did, and we don't really want to know. We don't really want to know, but so he, as my grandpa met my great-grandpa met my great-grandmother. They got married, and as a wedding present, Mr. Pellini bought our family a small little ranch out here in the Moyle, and that's where our little family started. From there, we got about 100 and it was a 20-acre parcel next to the Moyle Creek, and then there's another 100-acre piece up above there that we got. They didn't run much cattle back then. It was, maybe 10 or 20 head of cattle, and to pay the bills and everything, they cut posts, they built a fence, they put up hay, stacked hay, anything they could do to make money. And so slowly over the years, my grandpa was born. His name was William, and they had their own family, and Grandpa Pellini died, and so did Grandpa Pete Bottari, and they took over the ranch and started building the cattle herd up. So we are a cattle ranch. We're a cow-calf operation, and my uncle's one of the last real cowboys you'll ever meet. And out here in Elko County, you got to be a pretty tough son of a gun to run cows up here. Anyway, so skip into say the 70s, and we have 5 kids in the family, and I'm not one of them yet, because I wasn't born until 1978. I'm still a kid, yes. But so we have my Uncle Pete, my Uncle Paul, my Aunt Pam, my Dad Perry, and my Aunt Peggy. They all begin with P's. That way Grandma never forgot who to yell at, and if it was, it started with P anyway. So all these kids grew up on the ranch, and growing up on the ranch and growing the cattle herd up, they were up to maybe 200 by the time I was born, and by the time I was 15, we were leasing ground and running 1,000 head of cattle around the Moyle. We leased a lot of ground, and that made my family, my aunts and uncles, really entrepreneurial. And so my uncle is a realtor, my dad owns a contracting business, my other uncle runs the ranch, my aunt's a school teacher, but that's still tough too. So we all kind of were raised around doing our own thing and starting up. So, but of course, none of my family, my dad didn't want me to be a contractor, don't pound nails. Grandpa said, don't be a farmer, don't ranch, go do something where you can make some money. And so I did. And I left town after I graduated high school and went to the University of Utah, and I was going to be a music teacher. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to do, and I really wanted to be a music professor. And when I started doing all my work and everything, more and more I could see that I wasn't going to get to that point until I was in my 60s, and I realized that music was just something I really loved to do, and I went to school and learned how to write music, conduct music, play all the instruments, And no, we didn't even speak Italian in our family. But anyway, so as I'm sitting there, going to school, doing music, thinking I'm going to go into some kind of part of the music business, my job that I was doing while I was working in college was at a specialty food store. And I got the opportunity to start there when it was just booming, and the cheese business was going crazy in the United States. And I started the dairy spot in this little store, and it was a little gas station, 1,200 square feet, and we had 300 different imported cheeses in this little store. We had fresh made bread every single day. The highest quality olive oils, vinegars, dressing. It was an awesome place to be and be around all these great foods. Well, while I'm selling all these cheeses and getting to taste all this stuff, the Basque cheeses and the sheep's milk cheeses really hit me hard. And I'm like, man, this is really good stuff, And man, I wonder what it'd be like to make cheese. So the owner of the store, I confronted him about, maybe bringing some curds in and fooling around with it. And people make fresh mozzarella in-house lots of places. And so he said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And so I did, and all of a sudden I started making cheese. And it was really good. And so, the wheels start spinning in my head, and knowing that I want to start a family and I want to be back home. And so I decided that I'm going to be a cheesemaker, and I'm going to make sheep's milk cheese. And I come home and tell my family that this is what I want to do. They say, what? You can milk a sheep? I said, well, they've been doing it for 3,000 years over in France and Holland and Germany. They milked sheep and goats before they milked a cow. No, they didn't. Yeah, they did. This was 2002. So it's been it took a long time for me to really kind of knock down the door with my family and make them realize that I wasn't really just pulling their leg, So anyways, I moved me and my wife down here. I built my own house, bought 12 acres, and started practicing making cheese. And I don't think I made a decent wheel of cheese until probably 2014. But I practiced a lot. Milking a sheep and getting enough milk from a sheep to produce a wheel of cheese, that's a lot of work, And I was doing it with Suffolks because I wasn't, in this area, there's no dairy sheep, and there's specific breeds of dairy sheep, and there was none around here, and I could never find any that I could ever get my hands on, to see what it was going to be like. So anyway, skip part to where I finally got my sheep in 2012. I bought 9 ewes and 2 rams out of a place in Utah finally. And I bought them in the fall, so they were about 8 months old. And started my flock from there. So, thank you. So, many of you guys, there's probably, most people in Elko County think there's only like 5 types of sheep. There's Colombians, Suffolks, Hampshires, Dorsets, and Polypigs or something, Those are the standard sheep breeds in America, You talk about these sheep and people are like, what is that? And are you milking goats? So anyways, this is an East Frisian. East Frisian sheep are just like a Holstein cow. They're from Friesland, just like a Holstein is from Friesland. They produce up to a gallon of milk a day. You can see how this picture is really blurry, but the udder goes right down to the hock. They produce more than some of our cows do. They are a great milk producer. They don't like to be in the cold weather. They have problems with parasites. They are a royal pain in the butt. Kind of like a Holstein cow. They're super needy, and they're they're a pain to have around, really. So, knowing that, but they also have a high production in milk, I decided, well, okay, how, you know, if the cow dairy has Jersey crosses and other crosses in there, Guernseys, to have a higher milk fat content and also hardiness, you know. So I started doing some research and looking around and seeing what's good for our area. So Asaf is an Awasi East Frisian cross. So the Awasi is a desert sheep. High desert, they have a fat tail. People love to leave the tails on these animals and render the fat and use it for soaps and things like that, you know, and just eat it. But the thing that they do is they make your animal convert better on poor forage. And so that's what I wanted here. I wanted sheep that could eat dirt and make milk and make layers. That's my goal, you know. If they could do that, then I'm going to be ahead of the whole game everywhere else. So we have a ram that's an Asaf and Awasi. It's more Awasi than East Frisian, and he's crossed in there. So also we have Icelandic. Icelandic sheep are really small, and they're really nice to have because if you need to process animals, you just grab them and do whatever you want to do. You know, they're a 135, 140 pound animal. A first coat of wool that is impenetrable. You know, and like last year we had 18 inches of snow one day, and there wasn't one of my ewes that were in the barn. They were sitting out there, and they got that much snow on top of them, and they're just happier than hell. Okay? That cross into the animal gives their fleece a little bit more strength and makes the animal, you know, be able to tolerate our climate here. Because, you know, lots of places, most of the sheep dairies that are in America are on the East Coast. You know, there's very few over here. So I'm slowly trying to make a breed that's going to be good for our area. And, you know, starting from 9 animals, it takes a long time to get the genetics to where you want it to be. So also the Icelandic sheep are supposedly the cream of the crop in meat. So yeah, you can't tell that you're actually eating lamb most times. And that is, my clientele tells me that all the time. They can't believe how good the lamb is.
It's really good.
So then next we have Lacones. So Lacone is a French sheep, they milk them and make rope predominantly in France. They shed a little bit on their chest, but the thing about Lacone is, compared to the East Frisian, the solids that they give you in the milk are higher. So an East Frisian will make a bunch of milk, but say in a gallon of milk, you only get a pound of solids, where in a Lacone you get a pound and a half of solids out of that. And so, you know, that's beneficial to a cheesemaker for sure, because we're not selling just liquid. All right, so everybody knows what artisan means. You know, there's a lot of artisans here in town, the handmade bridles and saddles and things like that. Lots of people don't know what it is. I just wanted to put it on there. But, you know, I make cheese by hand. I don't use machines. It's all mama. Okay? So I'm going to go through the process here in a second. And it takes longer. It takes more time. But the end product is so much more valuable than something that you run through a processed machine, you know. So, farmstead. Farmstead is something that we don't have a lot anymore. You know, you go to the grocery store and someone says that it's a farmstead product, but they bought something from somebody else and brought it on their farm and then produced a product there. Farmstead to me is something that you have your animals and you produce the work and you put the time in and put it out. And it means a lot for a brand of your product to say, like, hey, this is my animal. I milked that sheep. I put that milk in this bucket, and I made this product. Voila, here you go. You know, you take a lot of pride in that. And so when people miss the label, the farmstead thing, it's irritating me a little bit. Why sheep and not goats? Everybody always wants to know why I want to milk sheep and not goats. Well, sheep produce about the same amount of milk that goats do, but the solids and the flavor of the milk are so much better. So like if we run down a gallon of milk, of cow's milk, the solids you get out of a gallon of milk is 2/3 of a pound. And a goat, about 3/4 of a pound, and sheep, with the crosses that I have, I average 1.5 pounds of solids. And when you're running 70-gallon batches, it makes it pay for itself. Is it profitable? It hasn't been yet. I put in a lot of time, but everything that's really, really great takes a long time to hatch, right? The lambs, the market for lambs out here is great. Everybody raises lamb though. So if I was ever to go mainstream and run 300 head of ewes, I don't think that I could sell 150 wether lambs, around here, because everybody else sells lambs too. And I'd basically knock myself right out of the market. I'd have to go up to the sale yards in Twin Falls or somewhere and get rid of them, So I am trying to keep my animals around 40 head, because I know I can sell 40 wether easy every year. And if I need to sell ewes for meat, then I can do that too, but I'd rather not, because the stock's too good to not sell to somebody else who wants to milk it. But the people I have to sell those to are all 300-500 miles away. So I always have to make a good deal.
800. Send get one down to Vegas.
You want to? I can send one down to Vegas. That's easy. And also, brings me, my dilemma. When I moved in here, down back home in 2003, I had approached my family, which we have. The ranch now is 2,200 acres, and we lease a couple small pastures, and then we have 4 different allotments from the BLM all around out here, and then north of Wells we have some private ground we lease also. So we have a lot of room to run the cows, and we have a new pivot we put on there, and finally after the pivot got up, I talked to my uncle into saying, hey, look at all these areas where we're not using the ground, well enough, I said I could take electric fence and fence it around here, throw some sheep in here, raise lambs in here, all over the corners here, and you wouldn't even know I was here. I wouldn't affect the cattle at all, and I can bring a different kind of business to the ranch, because with the sheep, you got wool. Wool's not really worth a whole lot, unless you got a good group of hand spinners around, you can sell it to them. But soap is something that people really, really love, and it's worth just as much as the cheese is. But you wouldn't think so, because you're buying a 2.5-ounce bar of soap for $5, right? But if you equate that out into pounds, it's $20 a pound, And so that's the business I'm trying to work in, so that another family member can come into the ranch and start that up, so we can have a little bit bigger pool of family around all the time, and still make cut a fat hog is what you're going to do. So that's why I'm on the ranch now, and I just recently moved. It's taken me that long. September is when I moved over there, and so I've been cowboying for 8 months now, and learning everything that my grandpa and my uncle have been doing for the last 100 years. We just got the Centennial Ranch Award from the Nevada Cattlemen's Association just a month ago. So we're one of 57, I think, in the state. So that was really cool. But so I've been doing that and trying to figure out how to rebuild my USDA facility on the new property and get everything going again. And it's been a little bit stressful. How do you go back?
The little arrow that goes to the left.
So you guys all know how you milk a cow. It's no different than how you milk a sheep, only they have 2 teats. I do have one ewe that has 4 teats, and they all work. But that's not something that you really want to have, because if she doesn't have enough lambs to eat all that milk, and they can't find the little teacup above, then she's going to get mastitis and cause problems. So it's not something that you want in your genetics. So when I get the milk out of the ewes, and I do use a machine for that, because per USDA, there's no way that you can milk the sheep and get the milk cooled in time by hand, unless you take the milk, which is a quart at a time, you put it into an ice bucket and then go to the next one, which is it causes cross-contamination problems like that, So it takes. Hurry up. Jeez Louise. Anyways, I take the milk. I have a 6-gallon pail, and I can milk 2 sheep at a time. It takes 2 minutes per head. So basically 2 minutes for 2, because I can do 2 at a time. It goes to a 6-gallon pail, and when it fills up, I dump it into a bucket and strain it with a milk filter, and then I put it into a big ice chest, or a chest freezer that's filled with salinized water, which is just, it's really salty water that won't freeze, and that cools the milk in time for the USDA. I am the only USDA sheep dairy in the state. So once we get to that point, I put the milk in the pot, and underneath the pot is just a big fire burner and a propane tank. And I turn the propane on, and as low as it can go, and wait for the milk to warm up. I take it to about 88 degrees or so. And once it gets to that point, I add cultures. I gotta let it sit for 45 minutes, and then I add the rennet. Does anybody know what rennet is? So rennet is it's an enzyme from the fourth stomach of a calf or a lamb, a ruminant, and they dry it out, make it into a paste. It curdles milk. It's just the real big or high acid, So it curdles the milk. It only takes a half an hour to curdle milk. Now this batch here is in a 20-gallon pot. The one I have now is 100 gallons. It only takes a half an hour to curd that. So it doesn't matter how much milk you're curding, it still takes the same amount of time. You just add a little bit more in there. So after the milk is curded, then you got to cut the curd. When you cut the curd, that releases the whey, and this is the process now, which is kind of important, is taking the whey out of the curds. Because if there's too much whey in there, then when you go to press it, it's going to have too much moisture in there, and it'll have bacteria grow, and your cheese won't go. It's not going to be good. And I make a pecorino. It's a hard pressed cheese, so it's not something that I want to have around in the cheese itself. So after it gets cut up like that, and then I can take it and dice it up into little teeny pea-sized balls with my hand. We put it into a fork that's covered in cheesecloth. They're 12-pound wheels. So you overfill those little forms about 3 inches higher than the top of it, and let it sit, and it'll just settle down. Put a lid on top of it. And you put it in your cheese press. Rock, but it's solid, And then from the brine, you take it and put it on our aging shells. Now, we use wood for the shells because we don't have any humidity out here in the high desert. And so any liquid that comes out of the cheese goes into the wood and then gets dispersed evenly through there and keeps a solid humidity in there. It needs to be 80 to 90%. And I'm trying to mimic putting it underground so I don't have to have a humidifier and all this other hoopla to try to make this product, I'd like it to be just like it was, 1,000 years ago. They've been making cheese a long time, and